#lightly paraphrased video script. Imagine this. You're standing in front of a woman who seems completely beyond your league. She's confident, beautiful, and accustomed to men going out of their way to impress her. Yet somehow, she looks at you differently. Not like you're just another man trying to win her approval, but like you're someone she can't quite understand, someone she's genuinely drawn toward. What if I told you that women, regardless of how confident or independent they may appear, have psychological weak spots, cracks in their emotional armor that most men completely overlook? And when you understand these vulnerabilities, you won't simply attract women. You'll understand the dynamic without having to force anything. This isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding what truly influences women on a subconscious level. Because attraction isn't logical. It's emotional. Most men appeal only to the surface, attempting to impress with words, money, or appearance. But the men who genuinely capture a woman's attention tap into deeper forces she doesn't consciously control. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And once you understand these weaknesses, you stop reacting to her moods or her tests. Instead, you observe, understand, and respond with calmness and control. And that control is precisely what makes you attractive. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to force anything. You simply need to become the man who understands his value and refuses to give it away just to gain approval. That is the man she respects. That is the man she values. That is the man she looks up to. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it through self-respect, discipline, and an unwavering presence. Before we get into these weaknesses, let me make one thing absolutely clear. This isn't about manipulating women. It's about understanding human nature. There is a difference. Manipulation means controlling someone against their will. Understanding means recognizing what drives people so you can connect with them on a deeper level. And when you understand female psychology, you stop chasing. You stop begging. You stop constantly wondering why she lost interest. You become the man she wants to pursue. The Roman Emperor Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you develop thoughts rooted in self-respect, purpose, and understanding, your soul begins to reflect them. And she will notice it. She will feel it. And she will naturally be drawn toward it. Because in a world filled with men who are constantly chasing, a man who is centered within himself is rare and valuable. Now, let's get into the first hidden weakness that can give you an advantage over most men. Weakness 1, the craving for emotional escapism. Most men assume women are logical when it comes to love, believing they choose partners based on stability, appearance, status, or security. But the reality is that women often fall for the experience a man creates for them, not simply the man himself. Women crave a man who can pull them into a completely different emotional reality. Why do you think they sometimes fantasize about bad boys, mysterious strangers, or forbidden love stories? It's not necessarily because they want trouble. It's because they are drawn toward the feeling of experiencing something unpredictable, something different from the ordinary routine of everyday life. And this is where most men make their biggest mistake. They're too predictable. They text her the same way every day. They agree with nearly everything she says. They make her feel comfortable, but they don't make her feel alive. And that's exactly why so many men end up trapped in the friend zone. They provide companionship, but they don't create emotions powerful enough for her to view them as something more. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. And when you learn how to create emotional contrast, you aren't simply reacting to her anymore. You're creating an emotional response within her. And that is a completely different kind of power. It's the power of a man who understands that attraction isn't simply about what you say. It's about how you make someone feel. So how do you apply this? You create emotional contrast. Women don't necessarily fall for the man who is simply nice. They become attracted to the man who makes them feel something. Start introducing unpredictability into your interactions. Don't always be available. Music. Challenge her opinions rather than automatically agreeing with everything she says. Tell stories that transport her into a different world. The key is not to become another predictable option. The moment a woman begins experiencing you as an experience rather than simply another man, she won't only be interested. She'll become deeply curious about you. Think about the people who have had the greatest impact on your own life. Were they always predictable, always safe, and always easy to understand? Or were they the people who kept you guessing, challenged you, and made you experience emotions you hadn't felt before? The answer is almost always the second group. Predictability creates comfort, but it doesn't necessarily create excitement. And excitement is one of the things that fuels attraction. When you're unpredictable in a controlled way, when you keep her curious without becoming chaotic, you become someone she wants to understand. And that desire to understand you is where intense curiosity begins. And speaking of hooks, let's move on to another weakness most women will rarely admit. Weakness 2, the unspoken attraction to strong boundaries. There's a reason the men women pursue most intensely are rarely the men who chase them first. It's because women generally don't respect a man who gives himself away too easily. Many men believe that being agreeable, constantly available, and endlessly accommodating will make a woman like them more. In reality, it can produce the opposite effect. It can cause her to take you for granted. Women are naturally drawn toward men who can establish the tone of a relationship. They want a man who isn't afraid to say no. A man who values his own time, his own mission, and his own self-respect. Because that kind of man is uncommon. Think about it. A woman may never openly say that she wants a challenge. But pay attention to the men she chooses to spend time with. It's rarely the man who makes himself endlessly available. Music. It's often the man whose attention feels meaningful because he has his own life. And here's something important. Women test men all the time, sometimes without even realizing they're doing it. They might cancel plans to see whether you'll chase. They might push your buttons to see how you react. They might try to dominate a conversation simply to find out whether you'll back down. But when she realizes that you remain firm in your values, that you won't bend simply to make her happy, something changes. The testing can turn into respect. And respect is one of the foundations of genuine attraction. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence on the future." When you establish strong boundaries, you're no longer anxiously dependent on her approval. You're grounded in yourself. And that grounding is what creates respect. So if you ever feel that a woman is becoming less interested, ask yourself this. Are you standing your ground? Or are you simply doing everything possible to keep her happy? Women don't necessarily value a man because he gives them everything immediately. They value a man who has standards and makes his attention meaningful. And once you understand this, your entire approach to attraction begins to change. Let me give you a real example of how this can play out. There was a man named Michael, age 47. He had been dating a woman for 3 months. At first, everything seemed to be going well. But then she gradually started pulling away. She began canceling plans at the last minute. She started taking hours to respond to his messages. Michael was confused. He had been a great boyfriend. He was attentive, caring, and always available. He believed that consistently showing up would make her feel secure. Instead, she was becoming more distant. So Michael made a change. He stopped being constantly available. He stopped chasing. He began putting more attention into his own life, his own goals, and his own friends. He didn't ignore her. But he stopped making her the center of his entire world. Within 2 weeks, she reached out. She wanted to see him. She wanted to talk. She had noticed the change. She realized Michael was a man with his own life, a man capable of walking away, a man whose presence couldn't simply be taken for granted. And that realization triggered something inside her. she began investing more effort. Not because Michael demanded it, but because she no longer felt certain that he would always be there regardless of how little she invested. This is the value of strong boundaries. When you stop making yourself endlessly available, your time becomes more meaningful. She begins seeing you as a man who has value in his own world, rather than a man desperately waiting for her attention. Now let's talk about another weakness that can keep attraction alive even when people don't fully understand why. Weakness 3, the thrill of uncertainty. Think about the last time you became completely absorbed in a television series, a movie, or even a book. What kept you watching? It wasn't the predictable scenes. It was the tension. The mystery. The feeling of not knowing what would happen next. Now here's what many men fail to understand. Attraction can work in a similar way. The more predictable you become, the easier you are to categorize. And once she knows exactly where she stands with you and exactly what you'll do, the sense of discovery can disappear. But when there is still some mystery, when she can't immediately understand everything you're thinking or feeling, her curiosity has room to grow. Women can be drawn to a man who creates uncertainty in a healthy and controlled way. They don't want complete chaos. But they can appreciate a man who keeps life interesting. And this is one reason some women become attracted to men who aren't constantly trying to please them. Ask yourself. Do you respond instantly to every message? Do you always tell her exactly how much you like her without allowing any tension to develop? Do you reveal every emotion immediately, leaving nothing for her to wonder about? If the answer is yes to any of these questions, you may be making the connection too predictable. Now, this does not mean you should play childish games or deliberately act distant without a reason. It simply means you should leave room for mystery. Instead of responding instantly every single time, allow yourself to live your own life. Instead of immediately explaining every emotion, allow a connection to develop naturally. Instead of making yourself available at every moment, maintain your own priorities. That doesn't make you a bad man. It makes your time meaningful. People crave excitement, adventure, and the feeling of discovering someone gradually. When she isn't completely certain about what you're thinking or where the relationship is heading, she may naturally become more curious about you. She starts thinking about you more. And that is where the dynamic can begin to shift. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." Realize this, and you will find strength. When you maintain emotional control, you exercise that power. You don't allow her moods or expectations to dictate every decision you make. You remain grounded within yourself. And that stability creates space for her to want to know more about you. Weakness 4, the magnetic pull of leadership. Most men believe that being nice, agreeable, and accommodating is enough to win a woman's heart. But women aren't necessarily looking for a man who simply follows their every move. They are often attracted to a man who can lead. You can see this everywhere. Some of the most respected and desired men throughout history, whether in movies, business, or real life, are men who move with purpose. They don't constantly ask permission to exist. They make decisions. They stand behind those decisions. And they have a clear direction. Women can naturally find this attractive. They may not always say it directly, but a man who knows what he wants and confidently moves toward it can be highly compelling. Think about it. Music? Have you ever seen a woman become deeply attracted to a man who constantly asks, "What do you want to do?" instead of ever making a decision himself? Have you noticed that men who earn respect from both men and women are often the ones who don't hesitate when action is required? Have you ever heard a woman say, "I love a guy who lets me make every single decision"? Probably not. Exactly. Now, this doesn't mean you should control a woman's life or dominate her choices. It means you should develop decisiveness. Instead of endlessly asking, "Where do you want to eat?" you can confidently suggest a place. Instead of always waiting for her to make the first move, take initiative when it makes sense. Don't be afraid to disagree respectfully. If she respects you, she'll appreciate that you have your own opinions and your own mind. Weak men constantly follow. Strong men know how to lead. And women can feel the difference. The moment she realizes that you have a direction in life, whether she's part of it or not, she may become more interested in you. And when she begins looking up to you, you become the kind of man whose presence is difficult to replace. Epictetus taught, no great thing is created suddenly. Leadership isn't something you're simply born with. It's something you build over time. You develop it through practice. Through making decisions. Through standing behind your choices. And as that leadership develops, it becomes part of your presence. That presence is what people notice. Weakness 5. The desire for a man who doesn't need her ***. Now here's perhaps the biggest secret of all. Women don't want to feel like they are the entire center of your universe. They want to be invited into a life that is already meaningful and exciting. Most men misunderstand this completely. They make a woman their top priority far too early. They abandon their goals. They put their ambitions aside. They begin organizing their entire life around her. And what often happens next? She loses interest. Not necessarily because she's cruel. Not because she wants to hurt you. But because when a woman feels that she's become the only source of your happiness, something important can disappear. Your independence. Think about it. Why do people become fascinated by celebrities, athletes, entrepreneurs, and high achievers? Why are people often drawn toward individuals who seem to have bigger purposes beyond their relationships? Why can someone who isn't constantly available sometimes seem more interesting than someone who is always waiting? It's simple. People are attracted to purpose. A woman wants to feel like she's becoming part of something meaningful, not like she has suddenly become the entire meaning of your life. When you have a vision, a goal, and a life that excites you whether she's there or not, you become more attractive. But the moment your entire world starts revolving around her, you risk losing the qualities that made you interesting in the first place. Seneca wrote, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a lot of it." One of the biggest ways people waste their time is by making someone else the center of their entire existence. When you make her your everything, you can lose sight of your purpose. You lose touch with your ambition. You stop investing in your own life. And she can sense that. She can feel when you've abandoned yourself for the sake of the relationship. And that isn't attractive. It's unhealthy. So here's how you prevent this from happening. Keep your mission at the center of your life. Women are often attracted to men who are moving somewhere. Don't constantly cancel your plans simply to remain available. A woman can respect a man who stands firmly behind his priorities. Keep your own interests. Protect your time. Build your life. The moment she sees that you're fulfilled, focused, and growing independently, she doesn't have to carry the responsibility of being your entire source of happiness. Instead, she can simply become a meaningful part of your world. Because deep down, people want to be around someone worth choosing. And when you understand these principles, you stop living your life around the pursuit of someone else's approval. Think about the people who have had the most profound impact on your life. Were they desperate for your approval? Or were they complete and confident within themselves? The answer is usually the second. The person who doesn't desperately need approval is often the person who commands the most respect. And respect is one of the foundations of desire. Women don't need to become someone's entire world. They can become part of a world that is already rich, full, and meaningful. They can be invited into something that already exists rather than being expected to build someone's entire life from nothing. When you have a mission, a purpose, and a fulfilling life, you become more compelling. You become someone she wants to be part of rather than someone she feels responsible for fixing. Now let me give you the practical application of everything we've discussed. Because understanding the theory is one thing. Knowing how to apply it in real life is what actually transforms your relationships. First, cultivate emotional contrast. Stop being completely predictable. Vary your interactions. Challenge her respectfully. Surprise her occasionally. Create experiences that feel different from what she experiences with everyone else. Second, establish strong boundaries. Know what you will and will not accept. Don't be afraid to say no. Value your time. Value your mission. Third, create healthy uncertainty. Don't reveal your entire emotional world all at once. Allow the connection to develop naturally. Leave room for curiosity. Let her invest as well. Fourth, lead with decisiveness. Take initiative. Make plans. Don't constantly wait for someone else to decide everything. Show that you have direction. Fifth, keep your mission at the center of your life. Never abandon your purpose for a relationship. Let her become part of your world rather than making her the entire center of it. And finally, understand that none of these principles are about manipulation. They're about understanding human nature. They're about becoming the kind of man who naturally creates attraction because he's grounded, confident, disciplined, and comfortable within himself. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus also taught, no great thing is created suddenly. The same is true of becoming the man you want to become. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens through the accumulation of small decisions. One choice builds upon another. And as you continue making those choices, you become more grounded, more present, and more capable of creating meaningful attraction. You are not broken. You were never broken. You were simply operating without the right information. Every man who struggles with women isn't necessarily missing something inside himself. Often, he's simply missing a map. And now you have one. The signals. The patterns. The invisible language that can tell you when it's time to move forward and when it's time to step back. Masculine presence. Emotional contrast. Strong boundaries. Healthy uncertainty. Decisive leadership. And a mission that keeps you centered. These aren't tricks. They aren't manipulations. They're principles for understanding how human attraction and connection can operate at a deeper psychological level. Use them honestly. Use them respectfully. Use them as a man who genuinely cares about the woman standing in front of him. Not as someone trying to manufacture a specific outcome, but as someone showing up as the fullest and strongest version of himself. That's the difference. That's always been the difference. You don't need perfection. You need direction. You don't need to become someone completely different. You need to become more of who you already are, but with greater clarity, intention, discipline, and the quiet confidence of a man who understands himself. The man who understands this doesn't spend his life chasing. He becomes. And the right woman will notice that from across the room. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When you cultivate thoughts of purpose, growth, discipline, and self-respect, your inner world begins to reflect them. And she will see it. She will feel it. And she will be naturally drawn toward it. Because in a world filled with men who are constantly seeking validation, a man who is centered within himself is rare. Be that man. Build that life. And watch how everything begins to change. If you found this video valuable, subscribe to the channel for more deep insights into psychology, attraction, relationships, and mastering the mind. Turn on notifications so you never miss a video, because trust me, the next one could change the way you see everything. Stay sharp. Stay focused. And remember, the strongest man is the one who doesn't need to prove anything. I'll see you in the next one.